welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm the founder of The Silver Edge, and our mission is to help you build and maintain a lean, healthy body that you love for the rest of your life, so you can show up in the second half of your life as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself. Today we have another episode of the Coach's Corner, so no guest today, it's just me, and we'll be back next week with our normal interview format. But today I want to cover a couple of things. We'll start off talking about the sins of the half-repper, including my own confession and redemption. And then we'll chat a little bit about what to do when you hit the dreaded weightlifting plateau. And at the very end, I talk about a new holiday gift promo that we're running. So if you're ready, let's do this. Let's get on with today's show. Don't be a half-repper. Okay, I want to start this segment with a story. So maybe 10 years or so ago, I mustered up the courage to walk into a large Globo gym. I had recently had a health scare and I was working hard to get healthy, and I decided that in addition to losing weight, I needed to get stronger. At the time, I was overweight and ridiculously weak. And to be honest, while my main motivation for going to the gym was in fact health, I really wanted to look better. I was skinny fat, meaning that I had bird legs, skinny arms, but was carrying considerable fat around my entire midsection, so basically a pot belly and man boobs. Not a great look. Anyway, that's another story for another time. Back to what I really wanted to talk about today. So my first few weeks in that gym, I timidly watched other members use the exercise machines, and then I'd wait until they were done, and then I'd hop on and try the exercise for myself. At first, I didn't go anywhere near the free weights, the barbells and the dumbbells, because that's where the big, intimidating looking men and women worked out. Fast forward a month or two, and I gradually worked up the courage to make my way over to the barbells. And I followed the exact same protocol as I did with the machines, which is to say I watched other members do exercises like squats and bench presses, and then tried to mimic them. And I don't want to undersell how intimidating this was, to walk up to the squat rack after some absolute beast of a human being squatted what looked like astronomical amounts of weight to me. So I would approach the squat rack, pray that none of the strong men and women were watching me, and then I'd load up the barbell with comically small plates and proceed to do my squats. But I stuck with it. I would barbell back squat every single leg day, and eventually I grew stronger until I finally graduated to the big 45-pound plates. Now, for those of you that don't know the significance of the 45-pound plates, it's kind of a big deal. These are the large plates that the strong people use. And I kept going, getting stronger and stronger until finally I graduated to the big leagues. I was doing 225 pounds for reps. That's 2 of the big 45-pound plates on each side of the barbell. Gone was the terrified, weak guy shyly waiting his turn for an open squat rack. Now I proudly walked up to the squat rack, did a couple of warm-up sets, then loaded that bar up with some big boy weights, and I got to work. But then one day something funny happened. I still remember this as if it happened only last week. Some guy comes into the gym, he loads up the barbell, and he proceeds to squat in a way that I'd never seen anyone squat before, ever. He'd start his squat in a slow, controlled descent, but he kept going and going, down and further down, until he was practically touching the ground with his butt. And then, without any fanfare, he simply stood back up. And then he did another rep in the exact same manner, and then another. In fact, he did a whole bunch of reps, all of them with that deep squat. And I remember thinking at the time, that can't be good for you. I mean, what about your knees? It looked very, very unnatural and, well, unsafe. And it looked very foreign to me. I mean, maybe there were people squatting to full depth in that gym at that time. I mean, there must have been. But when I went at the same time, 3 days a week, all the people I remember squatting didn't squat like that. Not even close. I remember going home and Googling something along the lines of safety and deep squats, and lo and behold, a bunch of articles popped up decrying the dreaded half rep and that the proper squat to full depth, that is, the hips at least parallel with the knees at the bottom, was in fact the proper squat form. Who knew? Certainly not me. And I think this is how I found Mark Rippetoe's outstanding book titled Starting Strength, which incidentally led me to Dr. Jonathan Sullivan's masterpiece titled The Barbell Prescription. Quick side note here, Dr. Sullivan has been a guest on this podcast, and I'll drop a link to that episode in the show notes. Definitely worth a listen if you haven't already tuned into that episode. Anyway, so I found myself guilty of the crime of being a half repper. Heck, it might even have been worse. I might have been a third or possibly even a quarter repper. But my crime was a crime of ignorance. So I took my newfound knowledge back to the gym. And on my next leg day, I stood looking at the rack trying to decide how much weight to put on the bar. I was half repping 225, so I figured I'd probably need to lighten that load just a little bit due to the increased range of motion. And I figured it was better to be safe than sorry, so I loaded up the barbell with 135 pounds, which you remember is 2 of the big boy plates. I got the barbell on my back, I stepped back and confidently sank all the way down, way deeper than I'd ever gone before, and got absolutely buried. The weight was absurdly heavy. It might as well have been a ton. Fortunately, the safety bars were there to catch the barbell as I crumpled beneath the weight. After ensuring that I wasn't injured, I furtively looked around to make sure none of the strong people witnessed this pathetic fiasco. If anyone noticed, they had the decency to look the other way as I climbed back to my feet. My pride was severely wounded, but I managed to escape otherwise unscathed. So I unloaded the big boy plates, swallowed my pride, put on a couple of those pathetically small weights, and started my squatting progression all over again. Now, that was a long time ago. I've done thousands, maybe tens of thousands of squats since then. I became a student of perfect form, mastering the skill of the full range of motion of that movement. This involved lots of reps at a light weight. I did box squats, pause squats, and tempo squats. I had to overcome some hip and ankle mobility issues along the way. And by the way, I did a YouTube video titled Barbell Back Squat Basics, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you're interested. And you can find that, as well as the links to Mark Rippetoe and Dr. Sullivan's books over there. And that's at silveredgefitness.com/episode 157. So I regularly work out in a couple of gyms these days. One is a bit of a hole-in-the-wall powerlifting type gym, and the other is a CrossFit gym. And it's extremely rare that I witness much half-repping happening in either of those gyms. But my daughter, who has bodybuilding aspiration, goes to a pretty big Globo gym, and I'll occasionally go work out with her, and I do see a bit of half-repping happening there. And I feel like for the most part, probably due in large part to the popularity of the squat these days, as well as social media, that half-repping no longer runs as rampant as it did 10 or 15 years ago. But it is still alive and well. And it's not only confined to the squat. I see this in all manner of movements, from the bench press to the overhead press, from curls to rows, etc. So my question is this: are you a half-repper? Now, I'm assuming that most of you listening to this are over 50, and allowing for the possibility that some of you have mobility issues that prevent you from completing some of these basic human movements through their intended entire range of motion. Fair enough, but I would encourage those of you in this boat to not lightly surrender moving in a full range of motion. Instead, I'd encourage you to work diligently on improving your mobility. But for those of you that may be in the same boat that I was, that is half-repping out of ignorance, I'd encourage you to check your form. Just prop your cell phone up on a bench with your water bottle and film yourself as you work out. And if you come to the horrifying discovery that you are in fact a half-repper, check your ego, lighten the load, and perform the full range of the exercise. You'll end up a stronger, fitter, and more mobile human. What to do when you hit a weightlifting plateau. Okay, let's discuss what you should do when you hit the dreaded weightlifting plateau. I suppose we should back up and set the table for this discussion first. So let's define what we mean by weightlifting plateau. And then we'll wrap up with some of my top tips for busting through a weightlifting plateau so you can get back to getting them gains. Well, actually, before we go any further, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the concept of progressive overload. If not, I would recommend going back and searching through some of the older Coach's Corner episodes. I know that I've covered this subject in great detail in the past. So, a weightlifting plateau is pretty much what it sounds like. It's when you get stuck on a certain weight and rep range on a certain exercise. Since we talked a good deal about back squats, let's just use that as an example. Let's say that you discovered, much to your horror, that you've been half repping your squats. But you've listened to this podcast, you found some good resources, and you've been progressing nicely from week to week. Let's say you did 3 sets of 10 reps at 135 pounds. So this week, you're going for 3 sets of 11 reps. You get 11 reps on your first set, but you can only muster 9 reps on your second set and 8 on your third set. Well, dang, you actually went backwards from the week before. But no worries, not every day is a peak performance day. Maybe you were a bit overtrained this day, or you didn't sleep well the night before, or just plain old you weren't feeling strong that day. No worries, it happens. But the next time your squats come up, you only manage to get 3 sets of 10 reps again, which is exactly what you did the time before. Okay, you've plateaued. But before you get discouraged, consider this. Plateauing is all a part of the process. I mean, if we never plateaued, we'd get infinitely stronger. And while that would be cool, it's just not the way things work in the real world. But now you're stuck, what do? Just stay at 3 sets of 10 at 135 pounds forever? Nope. There's a number of things you can do to get unstuck and break through a weightlifting plateau. Here are a couple of my favorite tips to smash plateaus and continue progressing. Keep in mind that these tips will work on almost any exercises, not just the squat. Number 1, change the tempo. And basically by this, I mean to slow down your reps. If you normally take 1 to 2 seconds on the eccentric portion, that's typically the lowering portion of a movement, consider slowing to a 3 or 4 second on that portion of the exercise. Another great tempo tip is to utilize pause reps. So in a squat, you'd hold for a second or 2 or potentially more at the bottom of that squat before standing back up. For a bicep curl, you'd pause at the top and squeeze really hard. Number 2, we could add a set. So basically in this case, we're simply adding volume. But in the example above, if you were stuck at 3 sets of 10, consider doing 4 sets of 8 and building that eventually to 4 sets of 10. Number 3, change your rest interval. Let's go back to our squat example. Let's say you were doing 3 sets of 10 squats with 60 seconds of rest between each set. You might want to increase your rest time by 15 to 30 seconds and see if that helps you progress. Number 4, this is a big one, check your nutrition. This one gets a lot of people. But if you're under eating and not getting adequate protein, you simply do not have the raw materials available for your body to build and increase strength. It is very difficult, if not downright impossible, to make any kind of strength gains when you're under eating. Number 5, switch up the programming. This one is my favorite, and I use it all the time when programming for our clients. In fact, I switch up programming often enough that plateauing is rarely a serious issue. And what we're really doing here is changing the stimulus. At the heart of a plateau is your body adapting to a stimulus. In our example, that was 3 sets of 10. This is a pretty classic hypertrophy set in rep range. So you might try dropping the reps to 3 to 5 reps, increase the weight, and add additional rest time between sets. So in the case of our squats, we might bump up to 165 pounds and do 4 sets of 3 to 5 reps with 2 to 3 minutes of rest in between each set. Or we could go the opposite direction and lower the weight in the rest periods and add some volume. In this case, maybe we back our squats down to 95 pounds and do 3 sets of 15 to 20 reps with 45 to 60 seconds of rest between each set. Either way, we're sending a new stimulus and a strong muscle building signal to our nervous system. So there you have it. There's 5 ways to bust past your current plateau and get back to making them gains. Now, if this all sounds complicated or you'd like help putting together some sensible and effective exercise programming specific for you, then just reach out and we'll schedule a quick call. Oh, and this next section of the podcast might be of interest to you as well. Give the gift of coaching. So this episode of Coach's Corner will drop on Friday, December the 9th. And assuming you're listening to this before Christmas 2022, I want to let you know about our holiday Give the Gift of Coaching promo that we're currently running. Basically, the idea is this. When you buy our 90-day body reboot coaching program, we'll give you a second 90-day body reboot coaching program absolutely free to gift to anyone you choose. The 90-Day Body Reboot program is our one-on-one personalized nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle coaching package designed to help you get and keep a healthy, lean body you love. So this holiday season, consider giving yourself the gift of a lean, healthy body and consider sharing this gift with a loved one. If you have questions or want more details, shoot us an email at coach@silveredgefitness.com. Okay, that's our show for today, folks. Again, I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes, and you can find that over at silveredgefitness.com/episode 157. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I want to let you know that we have other free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find our free guides with our top tips on nutrition, exercise, and healthy lifestyle to assist you in your weight loss and fitness journey. So feel free to head over there and download anything that looks useful to you. As we wrap up our time together today, you can show your support for this show in 2 important ways. The first is to tell a friend about this podcast and encourage them to give it a listen. The second is for you YouTube folks to click the like and subscribe buttons, and for you podcast folks to give this podcast a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today, and until next time, stay strong.